Okay, this is Robert Brune from We Act Radio and DC Media Group. I'm here with Craig Aaron from Free Press. So how did the roundtable go today?
I would say for the average person who's not a telecom lawyer, it was probably pretty dull. I will say this, a couple places where credit is due. I think the FCC staff asked a lot of really interesting questions of the experts. I did notice that Chairman Wheeler was in the room the entire time. I didn't see any other commissioners, but I did see the chairman in there. I think it was a pretty esoteric and technical discussion, although the last segment of the second panel did start to get into a real exchange over what the internet should look like. Very much largely in a business focus. We didn't hear a lot about the larger democratic issues, free speech issues that I think the commission would hear if they got outside of Washington. I do think they did an interesting inquiry, asked a lot of questions, had a lot of perspective, so I give the FCC some credit for that. I don't think it's any substitute for real engagement with the public, but as far as an expert session debating the finer points of some of what the rules could look like, it did provide that.
Okay. Are they saying anything about the balance of comments?
Yeah, I will say that inside the room multiple times, the idea that 3 million comments had come in and that there was a lot of opposition to what the FCC had proposed, that definitely came up several times with FCC staff acknowledging the size of the response and a number of panelists referring to just how unpopular what the FCC intends to do is. So I think that the real size of that is being felt. I will say it is, of course, being felt more outside of the building, in the press, in the real world. You're hearing that response everywhere. All the stories are about the size of the response. The fact that hundreds of people were in the streets of New York and Philadelphia yesterday. We have dozens here and almost no notice outside of the FCC again. For the third or fourth time since these rules have been proposed. It's definitely that for the public, this debate is moving outside of this building. The challenge we have in the next few months is to get to the people who live inside this building, work here every day. We need to get them outside of this building so they are hearing from people who aren't wearing suits like I am today. So they are hearing from actual internet users all across the country. I think that's really the next step here. The FCC has gotten a message that what they're doing is very unpopular. They've gotten a message that a lot more people care about this than they ever imagined. That makes them very nervous. This is, I think, a first attempt at public engagement, but true public engagement is not writing your questions down on a card and hoping they might be asked. True public engagement is in tweeting and hoping it gets picked up. That's part of it, and they deserve credit for having a roundtable, but this cannot be the end. If all the FCC does here is more roundtables with experts, that is not a truly public conversation, which doesn't mean they shouldn't do roundtables with experts. There's a place for that too.
Let's shift it back to the corporations for a second. One of the big issues is getting money out of politics, Citizens United, and how that might tie into this conversation. There are a lot of, if corporations now have a voice,
well,
let's look at how many corporations actually have objected to this.
Well, this is an interesting fight in that there are corporations technically on both sides of this debate. There are internet companies that are saying the FCC should have strong net neutrality rules. It's key to their business and their future and the things they're trying to create. There's a lot of creative entrepreneurs that will really benefit from net neutrality. That said, when you talk to the problem of money in politics and undue influence, it is very much weighted in front of the most powerful companies in the debate, and that is the cable companies and the phone companies. And the public response has woken up these sleeping giants, and they are starting to spend large sums of money. You can't go anywhere in Washington, D.C. and not see an ad from a Comcast or from the cable lobby. You can't open any publication, newsletter, video, the Sunday talk shows. It's ad after ad for Comcast, for the National Cable and Telecommunications Association, and what they're trying to do in some cases is actually co-opt the language of the activists, co-opt the language of the people fighting for net neutrality. Comcast, a company that has been sanctioned by this very agency for violating the open internet, now claims it supports net neutrality. Viewers can decide for themselves whether they want to trust those claims. I wouldn't. These guys are spending a lot of money to lobby. I've heard from almost anybody I've ever talked to on Capitol Hill about just how much they're hearing from companies now. These companies are going in one after the other, and you have to remember, these companies have a lot of lobbyists. They've got a lobbyist for every single member of Congress, almost gets their own personal lobbyist. So we've got millions and millions of people on the outside who don't know where the FCC is located, who've never gone through security in a building like this. They just want the internet to work. And on the other hand, you've got a lot of insiders who used to work at the FCC, used to work at Congress, trying to influence this process. And on top of it, and coming back to the issues of Citizens United and corporations speaking, these companies are spending a lot of money. It's election season. And you'll notice a lot of people who are running for office in tight races are trying to stay out of this debate because there's a lot of money being spent by these very big telecom and cable companies. So in the end, though, that's what this fight has always been about. It's always been about this question of, can organized people stand up to and beat organized money? It's happened before. It's the only thing that's ever worked, but it's never going to be easy. This is very much one of those fights. The great interest of the public, what they want, what they treasure about the internet, versus what the monopolists want, which is a monopoly and control of our experience. That's what we're fighting about.
Well, I know that you know about Sunlight Foundation, transparency and lobbyism. Is there anybody keeping track of who's coming and going of, all of this money?
I mean, the answer is yes and no. I mean, there is more transparency and more data available than there used to be, but a lot of lobbyists don't register as lobbyists. The system is pretty loose, so there's a lot, and frankly, you also can find evidence of a lot of lobbying. I mean, these companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars. We know they're in there visiting every office. We know that the FCC is filled with people who used to work in industry, and it's filled with a lot of people who work at the FCC who hope to someday work in industry. That's the field we're on here. That is just a fact in this debate. That's probably not a new story for a lot of people. Industry has an unbelievable influence over what happens here. Maybe in the telecommunications space, almost more than anywhere, partly because of the highly technical nature, because a lot of the opposition is more nascent. It's beginning to shift. Believe me, the insiders here have never seen a public response like this. They don't know what to do with it. They're going to try to devalue it. They're going to try to say that it doesn't count. They're going to try to say that people's comments don't matter. They don't know what they're talking about. Leave it to the experts. That's an old trick. They've tried it a lot of times before. They'll tell members of Congress, these are complicated issues. They'll make your head hurt. Leave them to us, the experts. That's, of course, the last thing that we should ever do, because what we need to have here is an actual public conversation and debate. We need to drag these incredibly important conversations out of the Federal Communications Commission and into the light of day. If this debate stays here in Washington, D.C., we lose. If this debate stays behind closed doors, we lose. If we actually get out across the country, if we actually have a public conversation like we've been having over the last few months, I think we can win. I absolutely think we can win this fight because there are more people out there that care about this than there are lobbyists. If it's just about who has the most lobbyists with the best connections, it's already over. But if it's about who's actually mobilizing people and people speaking out directly to decision makers, directly to their elected officials, I think we can have a very different result here, and a good result for the future of the internet and for the future of democracy.
Okay. If this does go out, what would you say to the general public as to why they should come out and ask questions or be concerned?
I think this is all about the future of your rights to connect and communicate. If you're going to be able to tell your own story, control your own online experience, speak for yourself on the most important communications medium we've got, the internet, then you need net neutrality. If we lose this fight, this free and open internet that's been so remarkable for economic innovation, democratic participation, and free speech goes away and starts to look like cable TV, where someone else picks and chooses for you what information you get, what channels you can get, and what you can do. That's not what the internet should be. It's not what the internet has ever been, but we're going to have to fight to keep it that way.
Okay, thank you, Craig.
Anytime. Or every time.